All right, today we're going to dive into one of the most critical, high-stakes challenges in any business, sales and operations planning, or S&OP for short. Think of it as the ultimate tightrope walk between what your company promises and what it can actually deliver.
You know the story, right? It's a classic. The sales team, they're out there, full of fire, selling the dream. They're promising features, they're promising delivery dates, incredible volumes. Meanwhile, you've got the operations team back on the ground, dealing with, the laws of physics, supply chain nightmares, and actual production capacity. S&OP is the process that's supposed to stop these two teams from living on completely different planets.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, this fundamental tension inside every single company, that constant tug of war between creating demand and then actually having to fulfill it.
So what is S&OP really? Well, officially it's a process, but what it really is getting sales, marketing, finance, and operations all into the same room, looking at the same set of numbers to agree on one single unified game plan. It's the absolutely essential bridge between the company's big, lofty, long-term strategy and the nitty-gritty, day-to-day work happening on the factory floor.
Okay, so what I love about this is you can see exactly where S&OP fits in. It's not about planning for next week, and it's not some 5-year vision. It lives in this crucial sweet spot, that 3 to 18-month window where you can still make big, meaningful changes. We're talking about things like adjusting your workforce size or building up inventory, a way to turn that big strategic idea into a concrete, actionable schedule. To make this all feel a bit more real, we're going to follow one high-stakes example all the way through this explainer, the launch of a brand new Google Pixel smartphone. This is where the textbook theory meets the brutal reality of the global marketplace.
So, picture this. The sales team walks into the S&OP meeting and drops this plan on the table. 3 million units, a massive demand spike right during the holidays, a complex mix of online and retail distribution. I mean, you can immediately feel the headache for the operations team, right? How on earth are you going to source all those components, schedule the factory time, and get inventory in the right places around the world to make this ambitious dream a reality?
Well, the answer starts with the main output of the S&OP process, the aggregate plan. You should think of this as the master toolkit that planners get to use to try and balance the scales of supply and demand.
And at a high level, you've really got two big levers you can pull. First, there's the capacity lever. This is where you proactively change your ability to produce. Hire more people, build up some stock. Or you can pull the demand lever. This is more reactive, where you try to influence your customers' behavior. Maybe run a special promotion to shift sales into a slower period.
And here you can really see the classic trade-offs. Sure, you can build inventory, but that costs a ton of money and comes with risk. You can hire and fire workers to match demand, but that's a killer for morale and has huge costs. Or you could do what a company like Apple does and subcontract your manufacturing to a partner like Foxconn. That gives you incredible flexibility to scale up or down, but you give up some control and some profit. Let's be clear, there is no free lunch in aggregate planning.
So with this toolkit in hand, a company has to make a pretty big decision. It has to choose its core philosophy. Is it going to chase demand, keep everything level and stable, or try to find some kind of middle ground?
At the two absolute extremes, you have the chase strategy and the level strategy. The chase strategy is all about being agile, matching your production rate to meet demand perfectly, month by month, week by week. The level strategy is the complete opposite. It values stability above all else, keeping production constant and letting your inventory act as a buffer for any ups and downs.
With the chase strategy, you're basically treating your workforce like a thermostat. Too much demand? Crank up the heat by hiring more folks or running a bunch of overtime. Things get too quiet? Turn it down by laying people off. It's super efficient for keeping inventory costs low, which is why service businesses, like a call center, pretty much have to use it. But man, it can be a really tough way to manage your people. Now, on the other hand, the level strategy is the picture of calm, predictable stability. Just imagine your Heinz. People buy ketchup pretty much all year round. There are no huge surprises, so you can run your factory at a steady, super efficient pace, keep your workforce happy and stable, and just let your warehouses absorb the little ripples in demand. It's fantastic for morale and quality, but it means you have to be willing to carry a lot of expensive inventory.
And that brings us to, well, reality. Because in the real world, these pure chase or pure level strategies, they're pretty rare. The vast majority of companies land somewhere in the middle, using what we call a mixed strategy to try and get the best of both worlds.
Let's circle back to our Google Pixel launch. Here's what a smart mixed strategy might look like for them.
They'd use a level component, a stable core workforce, to build a consistent base volume of phones every month. They'd build up what's called anticipation inventory ahead of the launch, and then, to handle that massive holiday spike, they bring in the chase elements. They run overtime with their core team, and they activate a pre-approved subcontractor to give them that extra burst of capacity they need.
And this forces Google's leadership to ask a really tough question. What's the bigger nightmare here? Is it having warehouses full of millions of dollars of unsold phones if the launch is a dud? Or is it having your subcontractor deliver a batch of faulty phones right before Christmas, absolutely destroying your brand's reputation? These are the kinds of brutal trade-offs that S&OP forces you to confront.
So how does a planner actually start to wrestle with these decisions? Well, it all starts with the data. They take the forecast and they turn it into a picture that makes the challenge impossible to ignore.
Let's just look at a simpler example for a second. Let's say we're a roofing supply manufacturer. Here's their 6-month forecast. Now, you can look at the monthly demand, sure, but the real key insight, that comes when you account for the different number of workdays each month and you calculate the demand per day.
And when you chart that daily demand, bam, the problem becomes crystal clear. The average demand for the whole 6 months is 50 units a day. But look, in the first 3 months, demand is way below that average, and in the last 3 months, it's way above it. This one visual instantly shows you the size of the gap you have to bridge.
So the strategic conclusion is just unavoidable. If this company wants to survive the spring and summer rush, it absolutely must use its slow winter months to produce more than it sells, building up a stockpile of inventory. Without that, they will fail. It's that simple.
This all brings us back to the ultimate takeaway. I mean, why go through all this trouble? Why does sales and operations planning actually matter so much?
Because S&OP, it's so much more than just a planning exercise. It's the process that forces the entire company to get on the same page. It connects what the boardroom wants to do with what the warehouse floor can actually do. And maybe most importantly, it forces an honest and sometimes difficult conversation about the hard choices, those trade-offs between what's cheapest, what's best for the customer, and what's best for your own people. And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. A spreadsheet can always tell you the lowest cost plan. That's the easy part. But leadership is about knowing when to choose a more expensive path. When do you decide that the stability of your workforce and the morale of your team is actually more important than hitting some short-term cost target? That's the question that separates a planner from a true leader.